The first thing I felt was fabric that was too clean to be mine, and a cold weight on my left hand that did not belong there. My throat tasted like last night's cheap champagne, but the room around me looked like money that never had to apologize. All tall windows and soft gray walls, and a ceiling so high it made me feel like I had shrunk overnight. When I lifted my hand, the diamond caught the morning light and threw it straight into my eyes, and my stomach dropped as if I had missed a step on a staircase. I sat up too fast, the silk sheets sliding off my shoulders, and my pulse started doing that panicky counting thing, like it was trying to calculate how many ways my life could be ruined before breakfast. I wore a black slip dress that I did not remember putting on, and my heels were nowhere, and the room smelled faintly like cedar and expensive cologne. I whispered, "No, no, no," like a prayer I did not believe in, and then I heard the door open with a soft, controlled click that sounded like permission being granted. He walked in like he owned every breath in the air, a tall, broad-shouldered Korean man with short, sleek black hair, a white collared shirt unbuttoned at the top, and a calm face that did not look surprised to find me awake. His eyes flicked to my hand, then back to my face, as if he had already memorized the ring, and was now checking the damage on me. "You're awake," he said, voice low and steady, like a judge stating a fact. I grabbed the sheet to my chest even though it did nothing to protect my dignity, and I pushed myself back against the headboard. "Where am I?" I demanded, and my voice shook in a way that made me hate myself. He did not rush, did not flinch, did not soften, just crossed the room and stopped at a polite distance that somehow still felt like control. "You're my home," he said. In Seoul Hills, I stared at him, then at the ring again, then back at him, trying to stitch time together with trembling fingers. "That's not possible," I said. "I don't know you." His mouth barely moved. Not quite a smile. Not quite pity. "You do," he replied. "You just don't remember the parts that would make this easier." My heart hammered louder. "Who are you?" I asked, and I hated that my eyes kept dropping to his throat, to that open collar, to the quiet confidence that made him look dangerous in a clean, civilized way. He answered like he had rehearsed for this moment. "Kong Jun Seo," he said. "And you and I got married last night in Vegas." I laughed once, sharp and ugly, because it was either that or scream. "No," I said. "That is not funny." He stepped closer and placed a small black velvet box on the bedside table, then a folded document beside it, then his phone, screen facing up, like evidence in a case. "It wasn't a joke," he said, and his tone made it sound like the world did not care whether I believed him. "Look," I forced my eyes onto the document, saw my name printed in bold, saw his beside it, saw a date that matched the emptiness in my head, and my lungs forgot how to work. "This is fake," I whispered, and he finally looked irritated, like my denial was an inconvenience, not a heartbreak. "It's filed," he said. "It's legal," then he added, quieter, almost like it was meant for only me. "And you put that ring on yourself." My fingers curled around the sheet as if it could anchor me, but the floor still felt like it was tilting, and he leaned down just enough for me to smell him and realize this was not a dream I could wake up from. "You have 10 minutes, he said. "After that, the first call comes in, and your name becomes a headline." I stumbled into the bathroom and braced both hands on a marble sink that looked like it had never seen panic before. The mirror showed a beautiful 27-year-old African woman with long black hair tangled at the ends and mascara smudged under eyes that looked too wide, too awake, too hunted, and for a second I did not recognize myself because fear had rearranged my face. I ran cold water over my wrists, trying to shock memory into place, but all I got were fragments like broken glass, neon lights, a hotel corridor, the taste of salt on my lips, my own laughter sounding reckless, and a man's hand at my lower back guiding me through a crowd as if he was protecting me from being swallowed. I tried to focus on something solid, so I stared at the ring again at the way it sat perfectly as if it had been chosen with my finger in mind, and that made my stomach twist in a new way because someone had paid attention to me in a way that felt both flattering and terrifying. When I walked back out, he was sitting in an armchair by the window like he belonged in it, jacket nowhere, sleeves rolled, calm as a person who had already won. "Tell me what happened," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Tell me why I can't remember." He watched me like he was measuring how much truth I could handle without breaking. "You drank," he said. "You were exhausted. You were running from something. I was working." I snapped. "I don't run from things," he lifted one eyebrow. You ran to Vegas, he said, and the way he said it made it sound like he had followed me there on purpose. I pointed at the papers. You arranged this, I accused. You trapped me. He stood up slowly, and the movement alone made the room feel smaller. I didn't need to trap you, he said. You walked into a situation you didn't understand, and someone tried to use you. I used a faster solution. My throat tightened. What situation? I asked. He took his phone and slid it across the table to me. On the screen was a short video clip that made my skin go cold. Me in a bright hotel lobby, hair down, smiling too wide, holding my hand up as a man slipped the ring on, and behind us, just out of focus, two men in suits watching like they were counting something. That's me, I whispered, and the proof made my denial feel childish. Why would I do that? I asked, and the question came out smaller, more vulnerable. Because you thought you were saving yourself, he said, and he looked away for the first time, like remembering annoyed him. Because you believed the words I said to you. I swallowed hard. What words? I pressed. He met my eyes again, and his voice turned even lower. You said you needed someone powerful, he told me. You said you needed a wall between you and the people coming for you. I shook my head. People aren't coming for me, I said, but it sounded like pleading now. He stepped closer and pointed at the document like it was a weapon. They will, he said. Because you saw something you shouldn't have seen, and because your face was on a camera where it shouldn't have been. I tried to breathe through the panic, and I forced myself to ask the question that tasted like humiliation. So what now? I said. He answered without drama. Now you play the role you agreed to, he said. You stay married to me for 90 days, and if I don't, I demanded, because I needed one thing to be mine. His eyes hardened. Then you walk out alone, he said. And I stop blocking the people who want to collect you like a debt. He did not give me a romantic speech, did not promise me safety like a hero in a movie, just walked me into a study that looked like it had been built for decisions that ruined lives. The desk was dark wood, the chairs were leather, and there was a single framed photo on a shelf that showed him younger, standing beside an older man with the same sharp eyes, and the resemblance made my chest tighten because it looked like inheritance and expectation, not love. A woman in a gray suit was already waiting, tablet in hand, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, and she didn't smile at me like a person meeting a bride. She nodded like a person meeting a variable. Mrs. Kong, she said, and the title hit me harder than the hangover.
I'm Matoni Han.
We need to move quickly. I stared at her. I'm not. I began, but Juna Seo cut me off with a glance that felt like a warning. She is, he said simply. I felt my cheeks burn, anger and shame mixing until I could not tell which one was driving my voice. This is insane, I said. I didn't consent to anything I don't remember. Attorney Han slid a paper toward me. Neat lines of text, signatures, stamps, all the ugly mechanics of reality. You did consent, she said. There is video proof of you signing, there are witnesses, and there is a recorded statement you gave. Recorded statement. I repeated, horrified. Jun So leaned down and pressed a button on his phone, and my own voice filled the room, slightly slurred but clear enough to destroy me. I understand what I'm doing, the recording said, and hearing myself sound confident while my brain felt empty made my skin crawl. I'm choosing this because I want protection. I shut my eyes. Stop, I whispered. He stopped it immediately, which was the first small mercy he had offered, and it made my stomach twist again because my body reacted to kindness even when my mind screamed about danger. What are the rules? I forced out because if I was trapped, I needed to know the shape of the cage. Attorney Han's tone was crisp. 90 days minimum, she said. Public appearance requirements. Confidentiality. No contact with certain individuals. A behavior clause, I blinked. A behavior clause, I repeated. Juna Seo's jaw tightened. It's for your safety, he said. It keeps you predictable. Predictable for who? I snapped. His eyes flashed, then cooled again.
For me, he said.
For my family. For my enemies. My throat tightened at the word enemies, because it made his world sound real and violent in a way my old life never had to be. I lifted my chin. If I do this, I said slowly, then I need leverage. Juna Seo's mouth twitched like he respected the attempt. Name it, he said. I looked at Attorney Han. I want the right to leave after 90 days, I said. No extensions without my consent. I want my own bank account while this is happening. I want my friend to know where I am, and I want the clause that says I'm not your property. Attorney Han hesitated, then looked to him. Jun Seo studied me in silence that felt like a slow blade. Finally, he nodded once.
Fine, he said.
But you follow the schedule, and you don't improvise in front of my family. I swallowed hard. Why your family? I asked. He answered like it was obvious. Because they don't approve of surprises, he said. And tonight, you're meeting them. My pen shook when I picked it up, and my signature looked like a stranger's handwriting. But when the ink dried, the room felt colder because the contract did not feel like paper anymore. It felt like a door locking behind me. They dressed me like a person I had never been, but the clothes still felt like a test. A stylist I never asked for pinned my long black hair into soft waves that looked effortless, then handed me a deep emerald dress that hugged my waist like it had been designed to make men look twice and women look sharper. In the mirror, I looked expensive, and that alone felt like a crime, because I did not feel like I had earned any of it, and my old self kept trying to climb out of my chest and run. Jun Seo waited downstairs, already in a black suit, white shirt crisp, no tie, the kind of controlled elegance that made him look like the danger was dressed in good manners. When he saw me, his gaze paused, just long enough to feel intimate, then he nodded as if he approved of the role I was about to play. You look appropriate, he said, and somehow that stung more than a compliment would have. That's the nicest thing you can say, I replied, and a flicker of amusement crossed his face like sunlight slipping under a door. It's the safest thing I can say, he corrected, and he offered his arm like it was a public prop. I took it because I had to, and the contact made my skin heat in a way that annoyed me, because my body was not loyal to my fear. The car ride was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and the city lights sliding by like we were moving through someone else's life. I tried to keep my breathing even, but every time I pictured his family, my stomach knotted. What do I call you in front of them? I asked. He looked out the window. Jun Seo, he said. Not Mr. Kong. Not sir, I blinked. That sounds too intimate, I said, because it did. He finally looked at me. That's the point, he said. They need to believe you belong. The mansion we arrived at was older, heavier, built like a statement, and the moment I stepped inside, I felt watched by the walls themselves. A woman approached first, elegant and composed, hair pinned, pearls at her throat, eyes sharp in a way that reminded me of a blade hidden under silk. So this is her, she said in Korean, then switched to English with perfect politeness. Welcome. Jun Seo's grip tightened on my hand. Mother, he said, and I felt the word land like a weight. The older man beside her did not move toward me, just studied me with the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. You married without permission, he said to Jun Seo, then looked at me. Why, I swallowed, forcing my voice not to shake. Because we chose it, I said, and the lie tasted metallic. The mother's gaze dropped to my ring, then to my face, like she was measuring whether I was real enough to be dangerous. What do you do? She asked. What family are you from? My cheeks heated, and I could feel my old life trying to betray me with honesty. I work, I said carefully. I take care of myself. I don't come from power, the father's mouth tightened. Then why would my son choose you? He demanded. Jun Seo answered before I could. Because she's not weak, he said, and he said it like a warning to them, not comfort for me. The mother stepped closer and lowered her voice. Do you love him? She asked, and the question hit too close to something I did not want to name yet. I forced a small smile and leaned into Jun Seo's side, letting performance become survival. I'm learning him, I said, and the mother's eyes narrowed like she could hear the fear behind my words. Then a phone vibrated somewhere in the room, a security man whispered into Jun Seo's ear, and his face shifted from controlled to lethal in half a second. We have a problem, the guard said, and Jun Seo's hand tightened around mine as if he was claiming me before the threat could. The problem did not look like a gun at first, it looked like a smile. Later, I would understand that in his world, the soft threats arrived wearing manners, because violence was always the second step, not the first. Jun Seo pulled me down a corridor lined with art that looked priceless, and I had the sick thought that even the paintings were trapped here, hung up to be admired by people who could afford cages. He pressed me into a small sitting room and shut the door, and the sound of it closing made my chest clench. Stay here, he said. Do not open the door for anyone. What is happening? I demanded, and my voice cracked despite my effort. He studied my face like he was deciding how much honesty I had earned. Someone saw you in Vegas, he said. Someone who shouldn't have. My skin went cold. Who? I asked. He exhaled slowly, then said a name like it was poison. Min Jae, he said. A man who thinks I owe him. I blinked. Why would he care about me? I asked, and I hated how small I sounded. Jun Seo stepped closer and lowered his voice. Because you are the easiest way to touch me without bleeding, he said. I swallowed hard. So I'm bait, I whispered. His eyes flicked, irritation flashing. You're not bait, he said. You're leverage they can't be allowed to hold. The phrasing did not comfort me, but something in his voice did, because it carried a protective certainty that felt like a wall rising between me and the dark. I heard footsteps outside, muted voices, the faint metallic sound of a weapon being checked, and my knees threatened to give out. I need my friend, I said suddenly, because my mind grabbed for my reality anchor like a lifeline. I need to call her later, he said. Not now. Her name is Tessa, I snapped. And she will call the police if I vanish. His eyes held mine, and for a moment he looked almost human, almost tired. The police won't help you here, he said. They will ask who you are, and someone will answer for you. The idea made my throat tighten. I want to leave, I said, and the words came out raw, because the romance I could feel starting in my chest suddenly felt like a trap with velvet lining. He did not argue, did not plead, just reached out and brushed his thumb once over the back of my hand, directly over the ring, a touch so brief it felt like an accident and a promise at the same time. You can leave after 90 days, he said. If we survive 90 days, my breath caught. Is that a threat? I asked. He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper, and it was the most intimate thing he had offered, because it was honest. It's a forecast, he said. The door handle shifted slightly, tested, then stopped, like someone on the other side was deciding whether to be polite or cruel. Jun Seo's gaze hardened, and he slid a small object into my palm, cool metal, compact and heavy. I looked down and realized it was a panic device, a single button, no explanation needed. If you press it, he said, everything changes. My fingers curled around it, my pulse roaring in my ears, and outside the door. A voice called my name like it already owned it, and I understood that the marriage was not just a lie anymore, it was my only cover. The voice outside the door said my name like it was tasting it, dragging the syllables out with familiarity that made my skin crawl, and I felt Jun Seo shift closer, his presence a solid heat at my back that steadied me even as it frightened me. Don't answer, he murmured, so quietly it barely disturbed the air, and I realized he was not asking for obedience. He was calculating risk in real time. My fingers tightened around the panic device until the edges pressed into my skin, and I nodded once because words felt too loud. The handle moved again, firmer this time, and a man laughed softly, the sound slipping through the door like smoke. I just want to talk, the voice said, smooth and false. Jun Seo stepped forward and opened the door himself before the moment could stretch any further, and the shift was instant, like watching someone flip a switch inside their chest. The man in the hallway was handsome in an expensive, careless way, dark hair slicked back, suit tailored just enough to suggest money without discipline, and his eyes went straight to me like I was an object he had misplaced. There she is, Min Jae said, smiling wider. The lucky bride. Jun Seo's voice was calm enough to be chilling. You're not invited, he said. Min Jae shrugged. Family event, he replied. I thought I'd congratulate you. His gaze dropped to my ring, lingered, then lifted back to my face. You look surprised, he added, and something in his tone made it feel like a threat wrapped in curiosity. I forced my shoulders back and met his eyes, because shrinking felt like surrender. It was a fast night, I said, and my voice shook only a little. Min Jae chuckled. Fast nights make expensive mistakes, he said. Jun Seo stepped between us without touching me, blocking the line of sight like a wall. Say what you came to say, he told him. Min Jae's smile thinned. Careful, he said. People might think you're hiding something precious. Jun Seo did not blink. Leave, he said, and the word landed like a command. For a second, I thought Min Jae would push it, would test how far the line went, but then his eyes flicked to the corners of the hall where security waited, and he laughed again, softer. Another time, he said to me, like it was a promise. When he finally walked away, The air rushed back into my lungs like I had been underwater, and I realized my hands were trembling so hard the panic device rattled faintly. Jun Seo closed the door and leaned his forehead against it for a brief second, the smallest crack in his armor, then straightened as if nothing had happened. "We're leaving," he said. Now, the drive back to his mansion felt longer, heavier, the city lights harsher against the dark windows, and I could not stop replaying Min Jae's eyes in my mind, the way he had looked at me like a chess piece he intended to move. "You said this would be manageable," I said finally, my voice tight. Jun Seo kept his eyes on the road. "It is," he replied. "But manageable doesn't mean safe." The days that followed settled into a rhythm that felt unreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's carefully choreographed life and was expected to hit my marks without rehearsal. I learned which corridors creaked at night, which rooms smelled faintly of coffee in the morning, which staff members avoided eye contact, and which offered small, cautious smiles that felt like secret support. Jun Seo left early and returned late, but he always checked on me in small ways that felt deliberate, asking if I had eaten, if I slept, if anyone had said something that unsettled me. We ate dinner together most nights, a quiet ritual at a long table that made conversation feel intimate despite the space between us. "You don't have to pretend here," he said one evening, noticing the stiffness in my shoulders. "Pretending is exhausting," I replied, and the honesty surprised us both. He watched me for a moment, then nodded. "That's why routines matter," he said. "They reduce variables," I snorted softly. "You reduce relationships to logistics," I said. His mouth twitched. "Feelings complicate decisions," he replied. "And yet here we are," I said, gesturing between us, and something warm flickered in his eyes before he shut it down. The warmth scared me more than the threats, because it made me forget, just for a moment, that this was built on fear and paperwork. I called Tessa from the garden one afternoon, her voice bursting through the phone like sunlight. "Where the hell have you been?" she demanded. I laughed, a brittle sound. "I got married," I said, and there was a long silence before she swore loudly. "That's not funny," she said. "It wasn't meant to be," I replied, and I did not tell her everything, just enough to keep her from driving across the country to rescue me. The first time Jun Seo touched me without an agenda, it startled both of us. We were sitting on the couch, watching something neither of us was paying attention to, when my phone buzzed with a message that made my face drain of color. He noticed instantly. "What is it?" he asked. I handed him the phone, my fingers brushing his by accident, and electricity skittered up my arm in a way that made me inhale sharply. He read the message, jaw tightening. "They found your apartment," he said. Fear flooded me, cold and fast. "They took pictures," I whispered. He exhaled slowly. "You're not going back there," he said. "I need my clothes," I protested weakly. He looked at me, really looked, and then reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, his touch careful, almost reverent. "You have everything you need here," he said, and for a second, I wanted to believe him. The night the illusion shattered came without warning, arriving on the sound of glass breaking and shouting that cut through sleep like a blade. I bolted upright, heart slamming, and before I could even process what was happening, Jun Seo was there, hauling me out of bed, his grip firm but not painful. "Shoes," he said. Now, the hallway lights were already on, security shouting orders, and the smell of smoke drifted in from somewhere below. "What's happening?" I demanded, panic clawing at my throat. "A message," he said grimly. A gunshot cracked through the air, closer than I expected, and instinct took over, my fingers slamming down on the panic device before I could think. Everything exploded into motion, alarms blaring, boots pounding, voices overlapping in a chaos that made my ears ring. Jun Seo pushed me behind him as they moved, his body a shield, and for the first time, I saw the violence of his world up close, not as a concept, but as heat and noise and fear. We were rushed through a service exit and into a car that peeled away before the gate was fully open, tires screaming in protest. My chest burned, breaths coming too fast, too shallow, and Jun Seo reached over and pressed his hand against my sternum, grounding, commanding. "Breathe," he said. With me, I forced myself to match his pace, and slowly, the world stopped spinning. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer, then fading as the car took sharp turns. "They won't stop," I said, tears streaking down my face now that the adrenaline was crashing. He looked at me, eyes dark and focused.
They will, he said.
I'll make sure of it. We spent the rest of the night in a safe house that smelled like dust and old paper, sitting on opposite ends of a couch while the sun crept up through narrow windows. My hands shook uncontrollably, and he draped a blanket over my shoulders without comment, the gesture quiet and intimate. You didn't sign up for this, I said hoarsely. He met my gaze, something raw flickering there. I didn't expect to care, he admitted, and the words hung between us like a confession neither of us was ready to unpack. The authorities came in the morning, not with sirens and shouting, but with questions that felt sharper, more invasive, because they were wrapped in polite smiles. A man in a dark suit introduced himself and sat across from me at a small table, hands folded, eyes assessing. We understand you were present during an incident last night, he said. Can you tell me what you saw? Junicio stood behind me, a silent presence I could feel like gravity, and I realized how exposed I was without his name, his power, his ring on my finger. I was asleep, I said carefully. I heard noises. I was moved for my safety, the man nodded, scribbling notes. You're married to Mr. Kong, he said. Recently, it was not a question. Yes, I replied. Congratulations, he said blandly. Marriages like yours attract attention. Is that a warning? I asked, surprising myself. His lips twitched. It's an observation, he said. When they finally left, my legs gave out, and I sank into a chair, exhaustion washing over me in waves. I can't do this, I said, voice breaking. I want out. Junicio crouched in front of me, his eyes level with mine, and the vulnerability there made my chest ache. If you leave now, he said gently, they will see it as weakness. I don't care, I said. He shook his head. You will, he replied. When they use you to hurt me, the idea twisted something inside me, fear tangling with something dangerously close to loyalty. I don't want to be your weakness, I whispered. He reached up and cupped my face, his thumb brushing away a tear, and the tenderness in the gesture felt like a betrayal of all his earlier distance. You're not, he said. You're my reason to end this, I laughed weakly. That sounds like a terrible romantic line, I said. He huffed a quiet breath. I told you, he replied. Romance is a liability. I left anyway, because fear can only be managed for so long before it demands escape. Tessa picked me up from a discreet location, her hug fierce and grounding, and as we drove away, the city skyline shrinking behind us, my chest felt hollow instead of relieved. You're safe now, she said, squeezing my hand. You look like hell, I replied, and we both laughed through tears. The days that followed were strange and quiet, my old apartment scrubbed of anything that could be used against me, my phone blessedly silent, but sleep refused to come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Junicio's face in the dark, heard the gunshot echo, felt the weight of the ring even when it was no longer there. When the call came, it came at dawn, the phone vibrating on the nightstand like a living thing. He's been shot, Attorney Han said without preamble. He asked for you. My heart dropped, then surged, panic and clarity colliding in a way that left no room for doubt. Where? I demanded, already moving. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear, and when I saw him lying there, pale against white sheets, a bandage stark against his skin, something inside me broke open. I took his hand without thinking, pressing my forehead to it, tears spilling freely. You idiot, I whispered. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then found me, and a faint smile curved his lips. You came back, he murmured. I never said I wouldn't, I said, voice shaking. He squeezed my fingers weakly. I need to change the terms, he said. No more contracts, I replied fiercely. No more cages, he nodded slowly.
Stay, he said.
Not because you're forced, I swallowed hard, the decision settling into place with a calm that surprised me. I'm staying, I said. But we do this differently, his eyes softened, relief and something like hope flickering there, and as the machines beeped steadily around us, I realized the danger had not ended, but neither had my choice, and this time, it was mine to make.